Good morning, Gearheads. Welcome to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
You don't sound as excited as usual.
Well, I don't know why. I'm probably more excited. We're at Zandvoort for the first time since 1985.
Say that in the early morning.
Well, this is John Massengill. That was Jonathan Green, and we have Les Kaiser in the studio. I'm Bob Varsha over Zoom. Dave O'Neill's not with us this morning. Mr. Varsha, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Really excited about this race coming up. This is going to be uncharted territory, and I think it's going to be one of two things. It's either going to be incredible, amazing, and wonderful, or it's going to be a train wreck. Which one?
That's exactly what Jonathan said as we were
About
getting
5
ready.
minutes ago. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah,
I agree. I couldn't
see.
agree more. I think you're right. Uncharted territory. I love the track. The banking has a role to play, good and bad. And who knows? It's a lottery.
And the pits. Don't forget the pits.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're supposedly the narrowest they've seen thus far this year. That includes places like Monaco. They've lowered the pit lane speed limit in the name of safety. I mean, it's all new, all different. And of course, we've got a great championship battle going on. So as Nico Rosberg said this morning on the pregame show, I can't wait for turn one.
Yeah, I'm with him.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, just a shout out to both Rosberg and Jenson Button, two great sportsmen at the top of their game, giving analysis. I mean, we've seen it with a few in NFL, but I love really good analyzers, and I think Sky have got it totally right with two great world champions who are very humble and very perfect. You know, they don't talk down to the crowd, and they tell it like it is.
Right.
Yeah, Button is so humble. You're absolutely right. Both of them. But yeah, was really enjoyable all weekend, man. And not only we're talking about this narrow pit lane, we're talking about the banking, but everything is new to everybody when you go to back to a circuit like this. So every single team has the same disadvantage.
Right, and you'll hear we've got a spot with Jan Lammers, and you'll hear about the changes that were made and the things that really make this track unique. It's a lot of fun. It was really a big deal to the community there. They put a lot of effort into this.
Yeah, and it's not without controversy either.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, the environmentalists are evidently not happy at all. And in fact, remember it was on again, off again, on again, or at least it was being debated. We all thought it was COVID. It wasn't COVID that was the problem. It was the environmentalists saying that they didn't want the emissions. They didn't want that much foot traffic and
they
so
wanted
on.
to protect the dunes.
Yep, the dunes.
Yeah.
It's a seaside resort, and they are worried about the environment. And so next year is not a given, despite the fact that it's bound to be a success people-wise. Yeah. Because the Dutch absolutely adore Max Verstappen, so they've got no worry about bringing the crowd in. But the locals weren't happy about it, and even the trophy is recycled glass.
Well, there you go.
Is that just a way of saying they took somebody's collection of beer bottles and
Could
put them on the shelf?
I mean, kudos to Jan Lammers, an ex-Formula One driver, Le Mans 24 Hours winner. He is the promoter of this race. You consider that it was supposed to be last year. They missed out, so there goes a whole big chunk of money. And then they were told after the tickets were sold this year that they could only have 2/3 of the crowd they had sold tickets to. And Lammers, I saw quoted as saying they lost 10 million euros right there. But he says we can withstand that for a couple of years of this 3 years plus 2-year option contract. And I sure hope it works out for them.
Yeah, likewise.
You know, that area, I had the opportunity to be there in 2019 when the Red Bull team visited and put on an F1 demo. And that was a fantastic visit. I question, okay, I'll agree that the foot traffic is certainly something that I didn't see while I was there. But the track day was full speed with a Carrera Cup and like a DTM style class and quite a bit of others.
And you were there in 2019, right?
Right.
And you got to see, obviously you met Jan Lammers, and I think we have that clip ready to go here in just a second. We'll play that, but also you got to get on track, you said?
What happened was I actually went through the entire experience from arriving in Amsterdam, getting on the train and riding that. And I think it was a 36-minute ride from Amsterdam over to Zandvoort. It's about a 5-minute walk from the train end in Zandvoort over to the track, and spend the day at the track. Had a great time there, and then walked the excruciating quarter mile from the track over to the beach for a cold beer.
Excruciating.
But Jan Lammers,
Shock.
we've got this clip. Let's play this. It's just a quick clip introducing himself. So let's play that from Jan Lammers.
Well, yeah, I can't think of a better ambassador for the place. This is your hometown, and quite honestly, you're a veteran of the sport. Not only Formula One, but especially the Le Mans, 24-hour Le Mans. Win of '88.
Yeah, privileged boy. So, I grew up here downtown in Zandvoort. Was born about 200 yards from the beach, in the area where usually they package the fish, before transport. When I was 12, I got introduced to, I got involved with the skids control school here. That school was owned by Rob Slotemaker, and Rob Slotemaker is international racing driver of his days. And he got most famous later when he did all the stunts, all the spinning in the movie Le Mans for Steve McQueen. So that led to my first introduction into Le Mans when I was 14. I was there for the first time. And then to win it 18 years later was of course an enormous total experience. But so when I was 12, I started here on the skid control school, just making all my little spins. And when I was 16, I did my first race here, won the first race and the championship. And from there on, it just took off. So my first international score was the European Formula 3 championship. And then in '79, I got in Formula 1 with an American team, Shadow.
There you go, Shadow, the ominous black shadow.
The Black Shadow from Don Nichols, he looked like the man on the Sandeman bottle, the whiskey. So that was from Formula 3 to Formula 1 was I'm not sure if it's a bigger step now than in those days, but and that was in the days where we say here that sex was still safe and motor racing dangerous. You know that quote, but that was very much the thing. So when I started, it was the time where people like James Hunt and Niki Lauda and Mario Andretti were already considering retiring, I presume.
Right.
But great days.
I mean, he was so instrumental in making this whole thing happen, right?
Absolutely. I mean, he is the Mario Andretti of that area, and so he's got the people behind him. He's got the knowledge. He's got the personal experience in it. Was a lot of effort, and as mentioned, there were environmental concerns. Well, for one, this track has been this area has had racing dating back into the 1920s, and so it's really not anything new. And it's
1920s.
1920s.
You have to specify.
There you go. Yeah, we're up to that point now. So, but one of the things that was really cool, our friend Price Cobb shared a little historical story about the area. So the track itself is quite small in the paddock and garage area. And so there was a time in the 60s and 70s that the teams would set up in town in different garages and hotel garages and local automotive centers, things like that, and not actually get to have their cars at the racetrack overnight and not have a nice full-size garage. In fact, the track was so tight that the 18-wheelers, the big tractors, could not really get in to the paddock area. So their solution was to use those garages in town. But then they had to drive from town to the paddock. And the way they handled that is at some given moment, all the cars fire up. The police escorts the procession of race cars, quite often with teenage boys at the wheel because they were small enough to fit these tight-fitting open-wheel cars and make it over to the track. And that's how they got there.
And all of them made it there, maybe?
Yeah. You just have to wonder, and how cool would that be to see a procession of, Formula cars going down Congress Avenue in Austin get out to the
with a bunch of teenagers in it.
Well, talking to teenagers,
that was an old tradition in some place like Sebring at Le Mans. For that same reason, there wasn't a lot of facilities at the track, so they, you found a garage wherever you could find one and drove your car in and out of the track every day.
Exactly right. And in fact, I was going to say, talking to teenagers, Zandvoort, of course, is famous for the Zandvoort Masters F3. So a lot of these guys drove here. Bottas was a double winner here. Hamilton won here. I think Rosberg also has had a win here. But so it's well known as an F3 track. So a lot of these guys have raced here on the way up.
Well, that's one of the things that stuck in my head when I thought Zandvoort. I mean, all these guys love it for Formula 3, but those are 300 horsepower race cars. Now you've got 1,000 horsepower Formula 1 cars flying around there. And that is a whole different kettle.
Instead, if we're going to do that, we're going to have to bank these curves.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, and that's a lot of the strategy was to keep speed and to increase the areas that it was possible to pass was to bank them. And that's to encourage side-by-side racing in areas that may not have been an option when it was flat.
Well, it has been very fun to watch and see all the photography of the banked curves and the drivers. I mean, guys, haven't you guys heard them saying how much they love this? And I think there was some trepidation by some of the drivers talking about the banking.
Oh, I would think so. I mean, recall, this is 18-degree banking, which is twice what the banking is at the corners at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And back in 2005, the Formula One teams were terrified by the banking at Indianapolis because of the stresses it put on the cars, and particularly the tires in that day. Ralf Schumacher had a big crash, which led a day later to the debacle of most of the field abandoning the race on the first lap in 2005. It was, and yet here we are, all these years later, and 18-degree banking is no big deal.
Well, the technology's advanced, so the tires are up for it.
Sure.
That's a big part of it. But you're right. One of the things you'll notice when you get a good view of the banked areas on this is it is not a flat track that's been tilted. There's actually some shape to the track as you look across the plane of the track surface. And so it's not an absolute curve, or absolute straight line. There is some curve and contour to that track, graduating up to the curve.
Well, you're right, John, though. It makes for some spectacular photography. Watching these cars, come from behind the trees through that turn 14 banking, and some of the rise up off the turn 3 banking, which is named for Arie Luyendyk, which I'm happy to see, the two-time 500 winner. Boy, this is a photographer's delight if you can get around the track.
Yeah, it's amazing when you start delving back into Dutch history, just how many great Dutch drivers there have been. And Arie Luyendyck's one. Obviously, you've got the Doornbos, you've got Lammers, you've got so many good ones. Jos the Boss.
Jost, yep.
Yeah, it's funny. You heard Jan Lammers mention Rob Slotemacher, who ran the skid school, as they used to call it there at Zandvoort. Slotemacher was David Hobbs's co-driver in his early Le Mans 24 Hours efforts when they won the Index of Performance driving a tiny little Triumph Spitfire. They raced together there for a couple of times.
God, Hobbs in a Spitfire? How do they put him in one of those?
Double folded. Origami.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a schmozzle.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of that race, Bob?
The race?
Le Mans?
No,
Le Mans, 24 Hours.
Okay, sorry. I thought you said something else. So, well, look, guys, let's go ahead. Let me talk about our sponsor first, and then we'll take a break. But the Speed City F1 on SiriusXM pre-race shows on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Use the cloud to secure your team in the office, at the track, or anywhere with CrowdStrike at crowdstrike.com/anywhere. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll continue to break down the Dutch Grand Prix, and we'll break down some qualifying. You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM. Back after these messages.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
We had to start with Max Verstappen, of course.
Oh, it's
Max.
This is an homage to he.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We were talking about the Sea of Orange, and when you're talking about the city and the protests,
Who knew there were so many McLaren fans there?
What's that?
Who knew there were so many McLaren fans there?
It would have never occurred to me that there'd be a protest, because every race, I mean, we don't have very many fans that just follow drivers around. We talked about this yesterday in a pre-production show, but And Bob, you talk about how Hamilton has a huge following worldwide, but man, the fans for Max Verstappen just go to every single race and are so vociferous.
You know who that reminds me of? Rossi. Valentino Rossi.
Yeah.
Every MotoGP race, there is a Rossi crowd there.
Yeah,
that's probably it's easy to get around in Europe. I mean, to go to all of those different races and all those nations that are so closely bunched. But still, your point is well taken that the Verstappen phenomenon really is amazing.
Well, I mentioned it before. His father had a huge following. So the Dutch have always had, and they're a big football nation. So they kind of have created almost a football feel to their following of Max. They sing, they all dress the same. It's a tribal thing. But I've not seen this sort of popularity in a youngster that's got at least another 10 years. I mean, he really will be up there with the Sennas and the Prosts and so on by the time he's finished. And who knows what he can achieve.
And this may be an easier race for Max than we're guessing. I heard an interview with him that just made the hair stand up on my neck when he said, well, yeah, I got the pole, but I had a double upshift in turn number 3, which lost me some tenths of a second. And then I got to turn 14 and I couldn't open my drag reduction system. So, I mean, he was like dragging a boat anchor, relatively speaking, and still took pole for this race by, just, 38 thousandths of a second. But I think Max has something in hand for these guys at the start. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I watched that lap after reading that article and thinking, wow. And then I did see the double shift and it was, but other than that, my word, what a faultless lap and how smooth was he. I mean, we're in for some really good racing. And just for the stats, it's the 6th pole in 7 races for Max.
Mm-hmm.
And what about Lewis Hamilton when he heard that? You mean Max did that lap with double shifting and no DRS?
All those problems, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things is basically it's already out there that Hamilton has been told don't hold back at all, just go for it. And that was part of the discussion, and that's another good topic about going to the new motors. All the Mercedes are going to their newer motors.
Yeah, Bob,
the lowest mileage.
Yeah, go ahead.
The lowest mileage engines they have because of what happened to Lewis on Friday when his car rolled to a stop, as did Sebastian Vettel's that day with what might have been a similar problem. They weren't talking about it, but it was suggested by engineer Gary Anderson that because of that banking, which of course they don't run anywhere else on the schedule, there may be oil scavenging problems if the oil return system isn't baffled properly for the G-forces in those turns. So they had all of the Mercedes guys go to their newest engines. And that's going to be a big factor going forward the rest of the year because just about everybody is running out of engines. You only get 3 before you have to start taking penalties. And those are 10 grid spot penalties. And that could really have an impact on the championship in these remaining races.
And Sergio Perez is one of those. He will start from the pit lane, having changed to PU, having changed his power unit. Latifi was also having to start from the pit lane for a Q2 accident.
Yeah, that was interesting. They didn't have current spec parts for the Williams. Maybe that's not a surprise. I don't know. But yeah, they had to put a different front wing on. And anytime you use a part for the race that you didn't have on the car in practice and qualifying, you're going to go to the back. And so that's where Latifi and Perez would have been had they not chosen a pit lane start, which is probably smart given what they anticipate is going to happen down in turn 1.
Yeah, there was a comment that I believe Sergio said that he really didn't think there was going to be much of a difference between pit lane and being on the back of the grid. And that like I said, that turn 1 is going to be big. We talk about the oil starvation situation. They were measuring, I believe it was between 5 and 6 Gs in some of the curves. And, with 72 laps and getting that at least once every lap, that's going to be a serious draw on the physical and mental strength of these guys.
That's what George Russell had to say after he unfortunately crashed out of qualifying. They've only done 12 consecutive laps. That's the most they've done in a row. And that was on Friday, which gave them a good taste of what it might be like doing 72 consecutive laps of this track. I mean, again, uncharted territory for these guys, and it's going to be fascinating.
I'm going to be interested to see how traffic works because strategy on pit stops, it's a short track. You've got to get in and out. But if you get stuck in traffic here, you come around that last corner and you suddenly find yourself coming out of the pits in traffic, it could change everything. And so strategy is going to play a huge role in when you get in and when you get out and get clean air.
Yeah, we're talking what, 2.646 miles, 14 turns. So yeah, fast and compact.
It's so quick with all those turns, and despite the length of the track, it is so fast. I mean, at Monaco, you're going around at about an average of 100 miles an hour. They're averaging like 130 miles an hour around this place.
Nuts.
Somebody heard described it as Monaco without the buildings.
Yeah, that's the old Hungaroring. Yeah,
this is like the second shortest lap time, right?
Yeah, must be. Yeah. I would have said it might be the shortest.
No, there's a sub-minute. Where was the sub-minute, guys?
You're right. A couple weeks ago.
Hungary? No.
No.
Was it Bahrain when they took out all the turns?
Maybe, yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. I knew there was a sub-minute, but it was Bahrain.
Snezerton in the Middle East, yeah.
It was the Roval at Bahrain.
Yeah, the second race in Bahrain.
The Roval. Well, guys, let's talk about qualifying, because we've alluded to the fast lap by Verstappen. But did y'all notice that the two of the lap times, the fastest lap time that Hamilton did in Q1 was identical down to the thousandth of a second of Max's in Q2, which was kind of weird, but everybody was thinking, this is it. This has got to be the fastest lap. And then, of course, Max is even faster. But I mean, Jonathan, you were talking about it yesterday. I mean, that lap by Verstappen, I mean, even with that, if you just ignore the fact that he didn't have DRS and everything, it was amazing.
Yeah, if you just watched it and hadn't read the article about the problems, I mean, it looked as though it was absolutely effortless. The car was on rails. He looked comfortable. You know, you hear him chuckling afterwards because it was that good. And you also hear the roar of the 70,000, 100,000 folk cheering him on. I mean, what a moment. What a purple patch to be in on your home track. But that was just faultless.
Well, I thought it was interesting when they got to the end. It was, you know, Verstappen and then Hamilton just by, 0.03 of a second behind him. But did you guys notice the lap speeds were dramatically different? Hamilton was at 314 kilometers an hour, and Max was only at 307. So it's like they had these identical lap times almost, but dramatically different. Remember the first sector? Bob, you were talking about this yesterday. Remember the first sector in Hamilton and Verstappen's fastest lap? It was not anywhere near the fastest.
Yeah, it came up on yellow on the timing screens. And this happened previously at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. Max was the slowest car in the speed traps, but there he was running at the front, which tells you a lot about the nature of Formula One and the technology and what these cars are capable of, and the balance, the compromise you have to come to get the most out of car and driver and team.
Well, you know, the other thing that's going to do, I mean, okay, so yes, when the stopwatch clicked, it was the same basically, but the difference, as you stated, was the speed. So most likely Hamilton's got some really slow curves, but he's just stomping it to get down the straightaway or get in between the curves. And so imagine what that's going to do at race pace. That is going to be just a total different strategy between there. Is Hamilton going to be able to pick up?
In qualifying at one point, the Sky TV folks put up a graphic that compared Lewis and Max through a series of corners. And consistently, Lewis was off the brakes sooner and on the throttle sooner. And yet they were virtually identical in terms of the speed traces. So that their driving styles have a significant technique difference. And I'm not sure how it is. I think it's Max carrying more speed through the corner. Lewis may be slowing quicker and accelerating faster, but Max is going faster at the apex. And that explains this minute difference between the cars. It's just so much fun to watch.
Exactly right. And that is where it is. It reminded me of the track day we went out to with the Miatas that were eating up on the Vipers through the S's at Coda, and then the Vipers blast by on the straightaway, and then they do it again the next lap.
I mean, that's a good example. It's just exaggerated, but yeah.
Shout out to Antonio Giovinazzi. I mean, his best ever qualifying in 7th. Really impressive. Talk about racing for your job. Everybody's saying, will he be around next year? Well, with qualifying like that, I'd say yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that a classic? Put a guy at the end of a contract year, and it's remarkable how much faster he gets.
Isn't that funny?
It's weird how that works.
Sadly, his teammate is on ice, literally the Iceman. He's isolated. Raikkonen pulling out of the Grand Prix because he's got positive COVID test. So he's isolating. He says he's fine, but I feel for him, given it's his last chance to run at a Dutch Grand Prix and all of these main races. Now he's announced his retirement. But there's another interesting story about the man coming in for him, Robert Kubica.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Robert Kubica was once the rising star of Formula One with some spectacular performances and some race victories, then almost had his right arm torn off in a rally crash, and that basically ended his Formula One career. But he's come back as a backup driver, and here he is running in the return to Zandvoort, replacing Kimi Räikkönen. He'll start on row 9 alongside Mick Schumacher, and the trivia point worth remembering is that Kubica also started alongside Mick's dad, Michael Schumacher, in the great 7-time world champions final start for Ferrari in Brazil in 2006.
That is a really good stat. I love it.
Cool. Where did you dig that up, Bob? That's impressive.
I had some help, I must say. Stat maven Sean Kelly came up with that one. And
oh man,
Sean Kelly. We're going to get him on the show at some point.
Good.
Sean Kelly is like Rain Man for stats. He is, and I mean that in a totally positive way. He has some of the best material out there. But hey, y'all kind of did a flyby on something that was interesting. So Kimi is out, but do you know who one of his contact points was?
Oh yeah, I did read this. One of
the Williams boss, Jos Capito.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to ask, why were they together?
Oh, I see. Yeah, I like that. Interesting.
Yeah, Capito said it was just a harmless dinner, but
there's no such thing between a head and a driver as a harmless dinner.
Yeah, things are getting interesting with that great run by Giovinazzi. And look at what Pierre Gasly did again. 4th place in the AlphaTauri. I mean, somebody needs to grab Gasly, or they got to pile a whole bunch of money on him to keep him in that car, because Gasly really has come into his own.
Yeah, and is the truth of the tape, have a Honda engine and you shall fly.
Yeah.
True that.
Yeah.
Or have Alex Albon behind you looking over your shoulder for that seat, too.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about the silly season as the day goes on, but there's lots to talk about in the driver market, and Raikkonen has started the dominoes.
Did you guys hear Raikkonen's response when they said, "How do you feel?"
No,
he said,
blah.
He said, fine.
That's it.
All right.
Compared to what?
All right, let's take a break, and we'll continue our qualifying discussion when we get back. You're listening to Speed City, live from Austin, Texas, back after these messages.
City F1 on Sirius XM.
Welcome back to Speed City. Has your workforce moved from the office or to the home or to the garage, or maybe a rented cabin with open Wi-Fi? If your company has expanded outside the office and moved all your applications to the cloud, there's a whole new world of threats you have to worry about, including ransomware. CrowdStrike revolutionized security by harnessing the speed and the power of the cloud to identify and stop the most advanced cyber attacks, even those that have never been seen before. So now you can work securely anywhere. Try CrowdStrike Falcon free today and protect your data and employees anywhere. Welcome to Anywhere. CrowdStrike. We stop breaches. Access the CrowdStrike Falcon platform free at crowdstrike.com/anywhere. Bob Varsha, would you run down qualifying for us and educate us on the rundown from yesterday?
It would be my pleasure, John. Starting at the front, Max Verstappen with his 10th career pole, 6th in the last 7 races for Red Bull, alongside Lewis Hamilton in the first of the Mercedes. On row 2, Valtteri Bottas in the second Mercedes. So it's going to be interesting. Mercedes is talking about splitting their pit strategies to try to get Red Bull to toss their race. And then Pierre Gasly, as I said, Superman in the AlphaTauri, starting P4. Row 3, I think Ferrari has to be a little bit disappointed. They led Friday's second session. They were quick in the first qualifying session, but Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz Jr. will start 5th and 6th. Then back on row 4, Antonio Giovinazzi with a spectacular effort for the Ferrari-powered Alfa Romeo. And Esteban Ocon in the first of the Alpines. His teammate, Fernando Alonso, starts 9th alongside Daniel Ricciardo for McLaren. Alpine doing great work and quiet work getting both cars into Q3 in recent races, so they may have something to say to the crowd today. Row 6, George Russell and Lance Stroll. Russell, of course, crashed out in qualifying, as did his Williams teammate. Lance Stroll continues to have trouble in the midfield. No idea why. On row 7, Lando Norris in the second McLaren, and concerningly, they don't seem to know why they're not quick. It's not like I had a problem here, a problem there. They're just slow, and Lando Norris looks severely disappointed after all of his great recent work. Nicholas Latifi was set to start 14th, but as we mentioned, he will go to a pit lane start for replacement parts. Yuki Tsunoda managed to get through a qualifying session. He'll start 15th, alongside Sebastian Vettel, who had a really sketchy-looking moment with the two Haas drivers in front of him as a whole bunch of cars queued up to try to make one last push run, as they say, in qualifying. We'll talk about that in a moment. Then you get to row 9, Robert Kubica in for Kimi Räikkönen and Alfa Romeo, alongside Mick Schumacher in the first of the Haas cars. And then on the back row, Nikita Mazepin, who was reportedly furious with his teammate Schumacher for ignoring the team rules about who gets priority in the qualifying sessions. And Sergio Perez, who had a very difficult qualifying and was also set for a pit lane start because he would have stopped at the back anyway after they replaced parts with some unapproved or discretionary pieces. So there you have it. It's an interesting lineup with some quick cars coming from the midfield, and it should be fun to watch.
I do want to talk about that Haas incident because Mazepin was trying to get his right.
Lost his temper and cut inside his teammate to try to retake the number one position between the two Haas cars, even though he had been warned excessively that Sebastian Vettel was starting his push lap and was coming down at great speed. I'm amazed that Vettel avoided a crash, and even more amazed that apparently Vettel went to the stewards and said that the Haas drivers should not be penalized because there were so many drivers doing essentially the same thing, queuing up to try to get some clean track for a push lap.
That's interesting. I definitely think there's no love lost between Mick Schumacher and Mazepin, though. Obviously, you've got, I mean, I wouldn't want to be Gunter in this situation because you've got Ferrari's golden boy and the name Schumacher, and then you've got the guy with the money. Who do you side with there when he's not happy?
That is truly a rock and a hard place. Well, what about next year? I mean, we're hearing rumors that the team's going to stay the same. That's my guess. Gunter has said publicly he's going to announce it this week, and it's just a case of dotting the I's. And so therefore I can't see anything dramatic happening. This was already planned, remember. They were taking a dive for 2021. They didn't put too much development into the car, and we're seeing the results, sadly. No points so far. But therefore I would expect, unless somebody nabs Mick Schumacher, which I doubt, because he's still just learning his way. You haven't heard any rumors of that?
I have not heard any rumors of that, but I'll keep an ear out.
I agree. I think both drivers will be back next year.
Yeah,
I think they will, and I hope they get Mazepin's steering sorted out.
Ouch. Yeah, he was in the gravel again at some point.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't Vettel. He wasn't the only one who had a lap messed up because Lando didn't get a good clean lap in. Of course, neither did Sergio Perez in qualifying.
No, and that actually is the big story for me. Bob alluded to this. You've got Mercedes with a tactical advantage today. They've got two cars. They can use the undercut. They can basically have one guy on a one-stop and the other guy on a two-stop, whereas Perez can't really help Verstappen in the same way starting from pit lane.
Yep. And of course, going back to what Bob was saying about Gasly, man, he had such a good race, but you kind of got, you got another Honda-powered car up there right behind Bottas and Hamilton up there too. So, but what about the Ferraris? Both look fast. In fact, their cars were fast. They were up in that 314 kilometers an hour as well, but they're sitting 5 and 6. I mean, this could be a good day for Ferrari.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. The car looked really nimble. Obviously, this tight sort of circuit where you need to have ease between corners seems to suit that Ferrari. What the chassis, is no question about it, is a good one. Maybe straight line speed or whatever, but it's not needed so much here, given that there's no long straights or anything. But the Ferrari, as again Bob said, was very fast on Friday, first and second in the first practice.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Les, we heard Yamaha, one of our sponsors, during the break. What did you say about Yamaha?
So yeah, there was an interesting, when we talk about Kimi going to lunch with Williams, well, Yamaha, the MotoGP guys, Alex Wren, being one of them, went to the Williams F1 factory and spent some time with them, really exploring a lot. It sounds like there was quite a bit of activity in visiting, not only just, some fun time, but it sounded like there were some technical aspects. So I'm curious because Williams, is known as a technology company in some of the areas of the world. I'm wondering if there's going to be some cross-pollination going on between those teams.
Yeah.
Well, nobody knows more about small displacement, high revving engines than the MotoGP crowd. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised. And remember, Yamaha has a history in Formula One. They were there for a couple of decades ago. They were with Brabham and
Tyrrell.
gave it a shot. Tyrrell. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I remember it. And they're obviously they are a capable company when it comes to developing, as he quite rightly points out, fast engines. So watch this space. I do think there is going to be there's starting the rumblings of an engine war starting to sort of bubble up, and it's all to do with Honda on the rise as we're seeing, and Mercedes not on the ebb, but I think there's going to be a battle there. But if somebody else joins it, it could be very interesting indeed.
I'm going to say I'm still, and nobody's going to be surprised by this if you heard any other show of ours. I think Porsche is going to be a big player. Porsche has supported Harley Davidson with the V-Rod engine. Porsche has supported so many different groups. I really do think, with their success that we saw in the IMSA and WEC and all of that, I think they're going to be a power unit player onto the grid. I don't think we're going to see a Porsche branded car there, but I think a power unit, I think they are a serious player that's not getting a lot of attention.
Hey, let me give out the phone number in case anybody's up and awake now and had your coffee and ready to join the conversation. 512-643-5483, 512-643-LIVE. I'm looking at the pictures on television. I'm looking at the photos on Twitter. There's a massive orange crowd. There's massive plumes of orange smoke from all those flares or smoke bombs or whatever they use in the crowd.
Yeah, the driver's really loving that.
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah, that is, they talked about it yesterday. They told the crowd, please don't do this during the middle of qualifying when you're trying to set the fastest lap on a light fuel load car and fight your way through the fog.
And obviously they didn't care.
Hey, Bob, you had a story that you wanted to talk about. Just actually a quick stat about Hamilton and his first visits to some of the 33 circuits.
Oh, yeah. He's raced on 33 circuits in Formula One in his career, and he has won his first race on a new circuit 11 of those 33 times. So one time in 3 that Hamilton shows up at a racetrack, he wins the race.
Wow.
Which is a pretty impressive stat, I'd have to say.
I wonder if Hamilton's ever been on this course.
Yeah, he did. He has raced Formula 3 here.
Yeah, a lot of these drivers have.
F3 guys.
Do we think there's overtaking on the banking?
Yes.
Boy. I think you'll see side by side on the banking. I don't know if anybody will actually get the overtake done. What do we finally decide? Are we using drag reduction or not on the banking? First they said yes, then they said no, then I think they said yes again.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that is going to be fascinating. Unless you vote yes, and I hope you're right, because that would be a highlight no matter what.
Yeah, because Verstappen wanted to use his in qualifying, which of course is not the race, but and he said it didn't work. So, I guess they're planning to use DRS on the banking. So, yeah, that'll be interesting.
All righty. So, quick headlines here. It looks like FI, as of 2 days ago, will not change the DRS rules for 14 and F1 and will not use DRS on the banking.
Will not. Okay.
I want to give a shout out to one of our fans, one of the guys who's followed us from day one, Kevin Kelly. Happy birthday, Kevin Kelly.
There you go.
Oh, man.
I think it was yesterday. And he tweeted at us, a nice little tweet. He was tweeted talking about Pirelli says this is a two-stop. And Pirelli says that a two-stop and a one-stop race are close. We're a bit unknown regarding tire degradation, which makes sense, of course. New circuit around Zandvoort. Teams have a good idea of what might happen based on their simulations, but conditions on track may throw all that out the window. And
Has anybody?
I wonder if
Have you
he's
seen a
having
pit
that.
lane delta? I haven't seen one yet.
No, I have not. It's going to be short, though, isn't it?
I wonder if
I
Kevin's
would
having.
think so, but they also did slow down the mandatory pit lane speed limit, so it may work out.
Talking of our fans, just a quick answer to last week's question from one of our fans. We paid the ransom. Bob is back.
Bob's back. That's right. I think Paul Bryan.
Thank you, Paul Bryan. That was very kind.
There you go. And speaking of Kevin Kelly, I'm wondering if he used his breakfast recipe and he's doing whiskey on Cheerios this morning.
Ooh, that's his breakfast
Oh,
recipe?
my God.
On that
That's a
note,
cry for help.
we're gonna get a break in real quick here. Let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll be about 10-15 minutes from the race. You listen to Speed City live from Austin, Texas. Back after a quick break.
Hello, I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's see. We are now, looks like 11 minutes from the start of the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort.
This is going to be, I'm
I
excited
know,
about
that's
this
why I
one.
was smiling. I was like,
Especially after what happened in Spa.
I know, this is so great, except for that we've got Ted Kravitz dancing on television. So.
You can't unsee that.
Yeah.
Hey, we have a
Not
caller.
exactly Soul Train, huh?
Yeah, I don't think he's made the audition.
Yeah. Well, he'd be like me at Soul Train, the one dorky white guy on the Soul Train
I was
broadcast.
just going to use the word nerdy, dorky. But he is such a lovable dorky nerd.
Disgusting act, and it's unfortunate that we had that on our air live.
Yes,
Thank
here.
you.
Nice one, Casey.
Hey, we've got a caller. We got a regular. We got Corvette Mike, the Corvette hauler, the truck driver, and we've talked about the new Corvette, the one that's rumored to be 9,000 RPM redline. They tweeted out a little sound clip of that. And then to follow that, they're talking about a twin turbo hybrid version of this Corvette. I mean, they already for $60,000 have the most amazing sports car ever. But Mike,
How about an all-wheel drive?
Yeah, well, there you go. Add all-wheel drive. They don't need it. You don't need all-wheel drive in the
But
Corvette.
imagine. Okay, do you need 1,000
You know what?
horsepower,
I
or
don't-
is 600
I don't
enough for
want my Corvette to be all-wheel drive. I want it to be rear-wheel drive because it's fast enough. Mike, what do you think?
I am out of that conversation. I just
you? Stay in your lane, dude.
A contract. Yeah. Anybody got the phone number for Lingenfelter?
Yeah. Where are you today, Mike?
I'm in the Appalachian Smoky Mountains over around Kingsport,
yeah.
Tennessee. Beautiful
Nice.
place.
Tri-Cities.
Yes,
Beautiful.
yes. They had this little Bristol race around here. Something about the bull ring, they call it, I think.
That's
But
right.
I'm just,
Bristol.
you guys say it so well. Get that, have that cup of coffee, sit down, and talk Formula One pre-race. I just enjoy listening to you guys. Glad to see Mr. Varsh is back, and everyone's on point with the Dutchman.
Who do you think's going to take this one?
I'm kind of leaning towards Maximum.
Yep. Maximilian.
It's hard not to, considering he set a lap with a broken car, essentially. Set the fastest lap.
That's
Right.
what I was listening earlier. You guys were discussing. I've missed a lot. You guys catch me up, and that's what I really like about this portion of the show is I hear everything that went on that I wasn't able to find out about, or so. But tell me again, how does Kimmy feel?
Bah.
Kimmy feels fine.
He feels fine. That's it.
That's it.
It was a one-word comment. I feel fine.
Yeah.
He didn't even say that. Fine.
Fine. I've got this. Leave
I'm
me
going to tell
alone.
you, I am non-symptomatic.
That's too many syllables for Kimmy.
Yeah, it would have just been asymptomatic.
I am Iceman isolating.
There you go.
Well, to think about the future for them, man. I don't think blood pressure and heart is going to be a problem.
Nah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, Mike, speaking of Corvettes, and Bob, speaking of Lingenfelter, that I owned a Lingenfelter ZR1, my favorite car, I think, of all time, even including the current fun car. It was the red line on a V8 Corvette was almost 8,000 RPMs, 32 valve dual overhead cam. You remember the LT5s, Mike?
I do not. I'm sorry to say.
They were from 1990 to 1995, very limited production, designed by Lotus, of all people.
Yeah.
The engine was designed by Lotus, and it was put into a Corvette, and really crazy, very cool car.
Yeah, that was the to me the down years for Corvette. They was at that C4. What was that thing?
C4 body was not the most sexy, was it?
Right. But again, you got to keep pushing forward. That's what we do.
Well, hey, some relative content for Mike. I'm going to ask him, did you deliver Jeff Gordon's Corvette that he's putting out for the Jeff Gordon Children Foundation, his children's charity? I want y'all to go there and throw some money and try to win that Corvette. Did you deliver it, Mike?
I cannot say that. I did make the
You always put him on the spot like this. He's not going to transgress.
I'm going to learn something from Mike.
How many years were you in the CIA, Mike? I want to know. You're so forthcoming.
What I did deliver last week was the 2022's 01 through 10 to the port of Brunswick for export. I think someone in GM's getting their car soon.
Yeah, that number one car is always the coveted.
Where'd you take them?
Yeah, I thought Hendricks automatically got those. But,
I do.
They are leaving.
Usually Barrett Jackson auctions off the rights to that car.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bob will be on that one.
How far are we from green light time, fellas?
We are now 5 minutes and 50 seconds, according to F1.com. And looking at the television screens, that looks about right. Well, Mike, thanks, buddy. Go sip some more coffee and get ready to have a wonderful time with the Dutch Grand Prix.
Yeah, there is no rain in this forecast, is there?
No rain.
Dang it, he said the word.
There wasn't until you just said that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So did that set some new precedents on the FIA to get serious about, guess you'd call dangerous conditions?
That's funny. We have even talked about Spa this week. Bob wasn't with us last week. And Bob, what do you think about all this? And what do you think? I guess the big question hanging in the air is, what do you think they should do to compensate? I mean, that's been the big thing. I felt kind of like, okay, look, there's a risk every time you
compensate who though?
But that's the fans. That's what everybody's complaining about. Well, everybody needs to be compensated because they didn't get a race. Well, yeah, we didn't get a race, and no one's happy about that. But we all know that it can rain and it can be disastrous sometimes.
Right. And it's not that they didn't see a race. They saw 3 F3 races, a W Series race. There was racing at Spa. They just didn't get the Grand Prix, which, of course, kind of buries the lead. The Grand Prix is what everybody wanted to see. There was universal agreement that they could not run green flag racing. The question is, do the fans therefore deserve some kind of compensation? Well, maybe. I keep thinking back to 2005 when Michelin did so much to compensate American fans after the tire debacle at Indianapolis. I agree with what Jonathan said yesterday during our chat. I think the fans who can produce a ticket from this year's race should get a hefty discount on next year's race.
Yeah,
half points, half price.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and obviously Liberty aren't going to start giving full ticket prices out, but I think it's a guarantee. I think that seemed to me would be a way of compensating that would keep everybody calm.
What do you think Bernie Ecclestone would have said?
I can't say that on the air.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, as I said, there was universal agreement there should not be a race. I think there was also universal agreement that they should not have gone to half points just because they did 2 laps in the rain behind the safety car. I think they should have adopted the NASCAR plan and gotten to halfway before there's any points. Otherwise, we can't run a race, so no points for anybody.
You know, there was so much rumor during the 3-hour delay that we were sitting there talking about all these rumors online. It's like, well, let's just run this thing on Monday. It's like they make it sound so easy, and they do that in NASCAR, but it's a little different in Formula One when you're picking this circus up and taking it around the world, and you're going to Zandvoort the next week. And there's lots of, like, all the unpaid stewards and all those things. What are they going to do? Are they going to not go to work on Monday?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
all your
just,
track workers, your medical staff, on and on and on. Yeah, it's huge. Just ask Bobby Epstein out at COTA.
Yeah, exactly. Before we go to F1, I just want to a quick shout out Logan Sargent getting a second place in race 1 in Formula 3, and a certain, gosh, if there wasn't enough of them, Leclerc winning.
Yes.
Ahead of the American. Arthur.
Hey, you know, we have some bad news about FIA Formula 3, and they're not, they announced yesterday, they're not coming to Austin. We have 4 Americans. Did anybody look at the driver sheet
bad
going,
news.
We have 4 Americans finally in FIA Formula 3, and they're not coming to Austin. So
what about the W Series?
The W Series, as far as I know, is still coming. Yeah.
Well, that doesn't make any sense then.
But you know what? I'm super excited about the W Series this year.
Yeah.
So, but we're
and
not
we've got
going
a
to
championship on our hands
because
too.
we got we have. Obviously, we have
Chadwick and Powell.
Yeah.
Neck and neck.
But in the FIA Formula 3, we have Jack Crawford, we have Juan Manuel Correa, we have, help me out, Jonathan.
Logan Sargent.
Logan Sargent.
And then one more.
I think there were actually 2 more this weekend in
5.
I think there was a 5th American. I just looked briefly at the results as I came to air with you guys. Yeah, I think there was a 5th one in this race. I mean, I'll keep looking for it. But I also want to get in one more stat, and I hope it doesn't bear out in the race. We've had 4 sessions, 3 practices, 1 qualifying, and 6 red flags at Zandvoort thus far. Let's hope we don't get another one today.
Yeah, no kidding. I've got a feeling that this race will be upset and strategies will go out the window, because I can see somebody planting it in the gravel, given the amount of gravel being thrown up during practice and so on. I think we're going to see people going off, and I think that we're going to see a forced change to strategies, because we're going to have a lot of yellows and a lot of safety car. That's my prediction.
That's what it sounds like sometimes.
All right. Well, we're out of time. We're going to throw it out to the BBC now for the race call, but stick with us through the race and write down the phone number, 512-643-5483. Give us a call after the race. Tell us what you think. We're excited. Talk to you after the race.